speaking from the Competent Communication Manual, also Project 7, researching your topic. Your title is Outsmarting Your Biases. Kelly Paulson.
Good morning. I work with an individual that shared a story with me that I'd like to now share with you. During the summer months, I work at Mayo Clinic, and one of our physicians at Mayo Clinic happens to be a surgeon, also happens to be black. We went to the farmer's market, and I don't know about you guys, but on the weekends, I don't look this pretty. I put on my faded jeans, I find a shirt that is well worn, usually has holes on it. I like to be comfortable. This physician, surgeon, went to the farmer's market, bought his produce, went up to the farmer to pay for it. And the farmer says, "We now take food stamps, so if you'd like to pay with those, we'll collect those from you." The individual that was telling me this story was relaying the story to her husband. And her husband had an interesting comment. He said, "You know, after hearing that," he goes, "I have a very mental picture in my mind of what that farmer looks like." Oh. My fellow Toastmasters, we all have biases in our lives. And those biases, more often than not, screw up the decisions that we make on a daily basis. I want to talk to you about this topic to bring awareness to it, so that in hopes that you don't let your biases screw your decisions up too much. But let's start with what a bias is. A bias is a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or a group of people, compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. And there are many forms of biases. We heard some today in Marie's speech with the publications. We also heard in Emma's humor, her bias of what we call American humor, I think, and it has to do with your environment. But today I'm going to talk about a few different forms of bias under the bigger umbrella of what we call cognitive bias. Cognitive bias refers to a genuine deficiency or limitation in our thinking. Basically, it's a flaw in judgment that arises from errors of memory, social attribution, and miscalculations. It's basically making inferences about other people and situations that may be drawn from an illogical fashion. There are many forms of cognitive bias. I found at least 20 out there when I was researching this. I'm just going to talk about 3 today. They're called negativity bias, confirmation bias, and omission bias. The first of these is negativity bias. This is when people tend to pay more attention to bad news than they do to good news. Social scientists theorize that given the choice, we perceive negative news as being more important or profound or maybe just more interesting than good news. Some of us see this every day in the workplace. We have people that tell horrible things or horrible stories about another individual, and it just spreads like wildfire, but we rarely hear any of the good things that people do. When we allow this form of bias, when we allow this form of bias, we run the risk of dwelling on the negativity at the expense of really dwelling on the good news. Steven Pinker is an author, and he wrote a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined. And in that book, he shows statistics about how crime, violence, and other injustices are actually declining in the U.S. Yet most people would argue that things are getting worse. This is a good example of negativity bias. We're focusing on the negative. The next type of cognitive bias I want to talk about is confirmation bias. We love to agree with people that agree with us. That's why when we're out on the net, we usually search for websites that have the same opinions as we do. And why we most often hang around people that have the same opinions that we have and the same taste. We tend to be put off by those individuals that disagree with us or are different from us because it makes us feel insecure and uncomfortable. Behavioral psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, and it's often the unconscious act, or uncouth act really, of referencing only those perspectives that fuel our pre-existing views, while at the same time dismissing opinions, no matter how valid those opinions are. Especially if those, or even if those opinions threaten our worldview. And as we've seen over the past year and continue to see, the internet and social media has made this tendency even worse. There's actually a new word that's come up to explain this. It's called alternate facts. The final type of cognitive bias I want to discuss is omission bias. It's a tendency to judge harmful actions as being worse or less moral than equally harmful omissions. Basically, omission bias favors inaction over action. Let me give you an example. Neen and Jeff both like to do competitions for our speech contest. Neen, as we know, is very competitive about this. Jeff, you may not know, is allergic to peanuts. Neen and Jeff decide to go out to lunch before one of their contests. Scenario number 1. Neen suggests to Jeff to order something off the menu that he knows has peanuts in it, but doesn't tell Jeff. Scenario number 2. Jeff does not get advice from Neen, but Jeff orders something off the menu and Neen knows it has peanuts in it, but doesn't say anything to Jeff. Which one of these scenarios is worse? Omission bias would say scenario number 1 is worse because it's something that was an act that Neen did, when truthfully, Neen is acting equally naughty in this situation. The bottom line is that patterns of unchecked bias and offensive behavior have the potential to erode our relationships, our society, and just us as human beings. We all have our biases. We're not perfect, but we also have the power to outsmart our biases. And it starts by paying attention to the biases in our own lives. So start recognizing those biases that screw up your own relationships and your decisions. Mr. Toastmaster.